This is the Big Friendly Swim podcast, and today's guest is an Olympian and a World Championship medalist in open water. Michael, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being on. So, Michael, talk to me about your Olympic quad leading up to the Tokyo Games. Like, you had a fairly gradual lead up. I believe you medaled at NCAAs. You were on the World Junior team. You were on the Senior World Championship team. And then you qualified for the Olympics in the pool. How did that extra COVID year affect your training if you just described that lead up to the Olympics?
It was a little difficult with the COVID year, but going back, like starting in 2016 with the quad, I remember watching Olympic trials going on. I was there competing and then watching all the items from the finals, watching the final swims happen. I just kind of had it in the back of my mind, like this was something I could do 4 years on. And I just kind of slowly progressed each year. 2017, I made the national team in the pool for the first time. And then I also medaled at Junior Worlds in the pool. And then in 2018, I made my first national team trip with Pan Pacs. And then 2019, I made Worlds and medaled at Worlds on the relay. And I just was kind of progressing each year and getting better and better. And then 2020 happened with COVID. COVID was kind of a little rough. I kind of say I didn't start training less hard. It was just kind of the edge that I would have in practice, like the goal in the back of my mind of trying to train for that kind of fell off, disappeared a little bit. Because there was so much talk, like with the Olympics being postponed that summer, there were always people talking about they didn't think the Olympics were going to actually end up happening. That for that first like part of 2020, I'd say from April through like September, October, it was just like wasn't the same training level that I usually had been at, but it slowly started to pick up from there. And I ended up having a pretty good training block just before trials that helped me make the team.
So, speaking of trials and talking about that meet, what were your emotions like after you qualified? Because I believe it was the 800 first, and then how did that sort of build your confidence heading into the 1500 a few days later?
Yeah, it was really great. I mean, going into the meet, I really only had the expectation of making it in the mile. The 800, I was just doing it. I mean, I wanted to make it in the 800, but at the time, it didn't really seem that realistic to me. So I was going in just giving my best effort. But before that final swim, I was kind of like looking around the ready room, and I was like, I could do this. Like, this is something that could happen. And then, just making the team, I was kind of in shock for most of that next couple of days after. And once I finally kind of started to settle in, like I was really confident going into the 1500. And then especially after the prelim swim felt really good. I felt really smooth, felt like I didn't put a lot of effort into it. I felt like I kind of was in a position to have a really good swim and make the team again, the 1500. But it ended up like kind of working against me because I kind of thought I had it like locked up, and I kind of lost the excitement a little bit, and I just was a little flat during the 1500 race.
So once you got to Tokyo and you were able to have that experience and have that sort of monkey off your back of like, I've qualified for the team, I'm an Olympian, what were the actual games like? And like, how did the COVID restrictions change the experience compared to previous international teams you'd been on?
Like getting there and being at the Olympics is just like a unreal experience. Just all the other athletes from all the different sports that you see there, just like everyone who's the best at their sport is there, and it's just like seeing a lot of other elite level athletes was just kind of crazy because the other experiences I've had have just been Pan Pacs and Worlds where it's just other swimmers. So it's just one sport. Like the COVID restrictions, I'm not too sure how it makes it different compared to past Olympics though, because I haven't been to previous Olympics. But I mean, like Team USA, we did our best to try to keep the atmosphere pretty good, keep the energy levels up. But I mean, it was just still amazing because it's the Olympics.
So you obviously are a very talented open water swimmer as well. Can you talk about those two different, like, at least from my perspective, they seem like two almost completely different sports in terms of how you train for them. But can you talk about the similarities and differences in training for both? And if either competitive format, like, complements the other?
Yeah, like there are differences between the two. There are a lot more similarities. Like when I train with my coach Mark Schubert, we don't really differentiate like how I approach, other than like for open water races, I start doing longer swims a little bit more often. We'd still usually do it before, in training for the mile or the pool. But open water is usually pretty similar to the pool training for me, at least. And one thing that's really good about open water that I find that always helps me in the pool, though, is that just getting used to changing a pace, because the pace changes throughout an open water race so much. And then in a mile, sometimes some people will take off during the middle of a race and the pace will change. And you have to get used to that and being able to like negative split and being able to hold on to that pace or then pick it up, and having to be able to adjust throughout a race. So they both complement each other in that way. I'd say the only real difference, though, it's a pretty obvious and big one, though, is in open water, there's no lane lines, and you're having to deal with having incidental contact, or sometimes there are people purposely like trying to hit you and knock you out of the way. And then just like there are no turns, like walls. There are no walls. You have to turn during most of these races, or like 5-6 laps of a course usually. But other than that, it's just kind of continuous swimming.
I'm curious. Just a question popped up in my mind. Have you ever like seen any animals or anything like in the middle of an open water race? Like, what's like the coolest thing you've seen?
During a race, I like usually see some like fish and stuff, but in Israel, for Junior Worlds, and then I was there in a World Cup in 2022. It's in the Red Sea, and the water is perfectly clear there. And during the practices, we would see like a bunch of different like needlefish. We'd see eels on the bottom, which was a little scary, but it was fine. And then for the 2022 World Cup, they had the course set up in a different location, and it was a little bit deeper where we were at, but we could still see pretty far down. And during one of the practices, we were looking down, or while we were swimming, like I looked down, I just saw a big manta ray, like swimming under us. It was pretty far down, so we were safe, but still a little freaky, but it was pretty cool to see.
That must be pretty awesome, like middle of like a race, like a tight knit race between like three guys, and then all of a sudden all three of you just see a manta ray at the bottom of the water, just like swimming along. So what did the post-Tokyo experience look like for you? Like, document for me the time between your last race at the Olympics and your first long course race almost 2 years later.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, I came back from the Olympics and was getting ready for college season. USA Swimming had set up an open water race in Las Vegas where it was a qualifier for the World Cup. And Abu Dhabi, that was also at the same time as Short Course Worlds. I ended up qualifying for Short Course Worlds, getting the opportunity to swim there, and then do the World Cup also for open water. Like that was a couple days before it. I went there. I didn't do all that well, and then there was COVID going around, so I ended up not swimming the 1500 and going home. And then I was just still going through the college season. I didn't have that great of an NCAAs, and then I had open water the following week, and I didn't do as well as I wanted, but I still was in a position to make the world's team that summer. And I went to the Portugal World Cup, which was the second part of our qualifying for open water for Worlds, and I qualified for the 25K from that. But then I went home after the trip and got COVID, and with the timing of everything and the trials for Worlds in the pool already happening in the spring, and it was a week or two after open water, so I didn't do it because I was focusing on open water. I just decided to take the rest of the summer off because it didn't seem like it seemed like a good time to take some time off, recover, and like get prepared for the next couple of years leading into the Olympics. I took that time off. My coach went to China, so I made the decision to go and train at Ohio State, and it's not too far from my home, so it kind of made sense. It was just easy. I would have a good training partner in Charlie Clark, and I kind of knew Bill Dorncott, the coach, before I went there. And I ended up going there, and it ended up being pretty good. I really enjoyed the team. I really liked the training overall. I went to that World Cup in Israel and had a pretty fun time there. I didn't do that well in the race, but it was just good experience for me in open water. And then I just had I got sick a couple more times in that fall or in that winter, like after that. And then, yeah, I finally raced long course for the first time in almost 2 years. And the first time it was just a little bit rough, but yeah, it was just like a lot happened. It felt like in a short amount of time.
It was just a lot of like, it's almost like a series of unfortunate events of like, you got sick, you went to a meet, you got sick again, went to another meet. So it sounds like now you're on the up and up qualifying for World Championships in February. And that leads me right into my next question of a lot of members of the national team are foregoing those World Championships. Yeah. And it's been mostly just college swimmers who are backing out of it. I'm curious if you can talk about like your decision to swim there, which I wish there was more people swimming there, and I wish the World Championships wasn't in the February of an Olympic year. Yeah. But how do you think that competition and that like experience in an Olympic year will set the stage for Paris?
Well, for me personally, the only reason I'm going is because for open water, it's a qualifier for the Olympics. And I qualified for this meet, the Portugal World Cup. That was in Madeira this 2 weeks ago now. So, I mean, that's just really the goal, is to try to qualify in open water now in Doha. And I mean, like, it'll just set me up for the Olympics, get more international experience racing at like that high level. It's my first time swimming a 10K at Worlds, so it's going to be a new experience, and it's going to be something that I'm really excited for, but it's going to be really tough. And I have a lot of hard training I've got to put in these next couple of weeks or next 7 weeks.
You know, that's really interesting, actually. I didn't know that the 10K at this upcoming Worlds would serve as a qualifier for the Olympics. So that actually gives you a very good reason to go, just qualify for your second Olympic team. My last question for you takes it back a couple years to 2019 and the Olympic qualifier in 2019. I'm curious if you could talk about like how you felt going into that race that was potentially a qualifier for the Tokyo Olympics, and then how that fueled you after missing the open water team to train for the pool Olympic trials a few years later.
Yeah, you know, it was very difficult. Even though I was at college that year, the main focus that whole year had pretty much been on getting myself ready for that open water 10K at nationals and qualifying for Worlds, and then hopefully qualifying for Worlds for the Olympics there. And when I didn't qualify for Worlds in that 10K, it was really tough. It was really disappointing. But, you know, I qualified to swim the 5K at that World, so like I kind of like had to forget about it, learn from my mistakes of that race and just try to move forward so I could prepare myself to do my best. You know, I was still getting the chance to represent the U.S. at Worlds, so something to still be excited about. And so it was just kind of quick, but I mean, it really fueled me, I'd say, like in this like winter, spring of 2021, just knowing how I felt after that race. I didn't really want to feel that again.
You know, I think it's interesting to look back on like where everybody's mentality was at in 2019, and especially on an international stage where things were gearing up for the Tokyo Olympics and everybody was getting ready. And then like 6 months before the meet, everything shut down. Yeah. Everybody is like in their final preparations, or like they've had something affect them in their training with like a revitalized focus going into 2020, and then just back to square one for everyone.
Yeah. And it was crazy because when I had found out, I was training, the national team training camp, and at the OTC in March, and like we'd had, I can't exactly recall because it's 3 years ago now, but I think it might have been like a week of training there, and then that was when all the stuff. I mean, COVID had been talked about, but it wasn't like serious, like people talking about lockdowns or canceling anything yet. But then like the games were getting canceled, NCAAs got canceled, and then they sent us home, and then like the Olympics still hadn't been canceled yet, so it was just like a pretty stressful time, and it was just like everybody was so ready and excited for the Olympic trials and then the Olympics that year, and then it was just like everything got cut off, and it was kind of like, what do we do now?
It also paints an interesting like alternative reality, sort of like what would have happened if the Olympics had been in 2020. Like there's a lot of people that missed out that probably would have made the team, like a Nathan Adrian or a Matt Grievers, who the extra year probably didn't really benefit them. But then athletes probably like you or Tori Husk or Claire Curzan, who that extra year just gave them more time to train. It gave those younger athletes more time to train and grow. I mean, the way things played out is the way things played out. Like, it doesn't lessen the amazing accomplishment of all of these people are now Olympians. But it's just an interesting, like, what could have been versus what happened.
Yeah, right, really. Well, no, I was just going to add, like, it's just, like, very interesting. Like, I feel like that's something we're going to continue to talk about for a long time is, you know, like, how would these athletes who'd made the Olympic team, what would their performances been at Olympic trials? And some of those older athletes, like, how well would they have done if the Olympics had been that summer? It's just, and I mean, there are a lot of athletes too that had shots at making the Olympic team that summer that ended up having to retire because they didn't have training options during 2020 because of all the COVID restrictions.
I mean, even some of the younger athletes, like Simone Manuel was only like 25 or 24, and that extra year probably affected her a lot mentally. And she made the team in 2021, but what could have been had she been in that 2019-2020 form, where she probably could have been a contender to repeat for Olympic gold in the 100 free.
Yeah.
All right, Michael. Well, before we go, I always give time for the people at the end of each interview to promote something of their choice or talk about something of their choice. So it could be a sponsorship. It could be plugging your Instagram. I had somebody like promote a football team. So it's essentially just your time to speak whatever you want.
You know, I just have to say the only thing I'd really want to promote right now is people getting into and watching open water, because I think it's a much more exciting sport than people think it is. You know, just give it a chance. Watch this upcoming Worlds. It's going to be pretty exciting. Like the girls and guys 10K are going to be pretty exciting races with them being Olympic qualifiers. There's a lot on the line. So I'd just say February 3rd and February 4th, find a way to watch the races and do it.
You know, I think I agree with that very much. Especially, I agree with that, and I'd like to add on like the mile as well, which is a race that famously NBC will cut to ads in the middle of the race, and I'm like, I was in the middle of watching that.
Yeah, I mean, they usually cut it right when something ends up happening too, and I mean, thankfully, with how exciting the 800 and 1500 have been at the Olympics, with Bobby's finish, and then how the races have been the most, like the past two Worlds, I think hopefully they'll take away that commercial break, because I mean, this is gearing up to be a really great year for the mile with all the fast swimming that's going on and all the great racers that are getting ready for it.
I hope so, especially like in the mile right now, like 7 or 8 of the top 10 ever are all competing at the same time. And then a lot of those guys, like Florian Velbrod, Rick Paltrinieri, a lot of them are open water guys too. So like all of these exceptionally talented athletes are all swimming at the same time. It almost feels like we're in like a new like golden age of men's distance swimming. It kind of reminds me of like when Grant Hackett was swimming, Ian Thorpe, Kieran Perkins, like all these crazy good distance swimmers. It feels like we're sort of entering like a new age of exceptionally talented milers and open water swimmers.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the U.S. now, we have all these young kids, you know, coming up. It's pretty exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens this summer. It's just going to depend, no matter how I do. I'm just excited to see the times and what USA Swimming does at the Olympics.
I think it has the potential to be a really, really fast Olympic trials. I mean, you've got Luka Mijatovic went 4:15 in the 500 free yesterday, and I'm like, that would have finaled that would have gotten 16th at NCAA's last year.
It's crazy.
Crazy fast. All right, Michael. Well, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.
Yeah.